Taito Egret 2 Mini Arcade Console is awesome. This is my first ever mini console, and I'm so glad I picked this up. And hey, if you're on the fence, just check this out. Oh yeah. Taito absolutely nailed the design of this thing. Just look at it. It's got a bit of a curve to the bevel itself, so even though the monitor screen is technically flat, you sort of get the illusion that you're playing on an original, rounded, tube CRT monitor, and the viewing angles on this thing are most excellent. Flipping the unit over, you're actually able to switch the joystick from 4-way direction to 8-way on the fly. It's awesome. I've never seen that anywhere else, and it works totally great. Now, that being said, I do not recommend that you try doing it while it's still plugged in and powered on. I tend to knock the cable loose. It's very sensitive, unfortunately, so just power off your unit, power it back on after you've switched the joystick, but otherwise, it works great. Just be careful with that. On that note, unfortunately, there's a big oversight from Taito in releasing this unit without a wall adapter for the USB cable. I could not imagine why they did this if the cable has a very specific requirement of voltage or amps or whatever, but I had to basically shuffle between 2 or 3 of my USB plugs that I had lying around until I found one that worked. Now that it works, it's totally fine, but I couldn't tell you why the other ones didn't work and why the one I use now does work. I have no idea. So just keep that in mind that it might take you a couple tries to find one that works. Once you get it working, it's great, but it definitely is a big oversight on Taito's part. On the back of the unit, we have some aesthetic flaps that unfortunately don't open, but they look cool, like the original Japanese arcade cabinet. And then below are your ports. Out of the box, third-party controllers will likely not work with this unit, except for maybe another mini arcade console product like the Sega Astro City Mini Fight Stick or something like that. You'll need something like this. This is the Mayflash S Pro adapter. This should work with a lot of your controllers. I purchased this and actually attached this little nub to it as a DIY to keep it stable so it doesn't flop around. Just plug it into the back here. When you plug it in, you should see this white blink, which should happen automatically, which means you're good to go. And check it out. The Xbox 360 wired controller, at least, is totally working. So select is your coins, start is start, and again, everything just kind of works. I actually was surprised. I sent an email to Mayflash asking if they were planning to support this. I'll show the reply to that email here. Feel free to pause if you want to read that. I was surprised they replied at all. But as you can see, it's totally working. This is using the joystick, but the D-pad also works just great. Only the home button does not work. So if you want to switch games, you'll have to press the button on the main unit, unfortunately. But otherwise, it's awesome. All right, let's test out my fight stick. This is my Nintendo Switch / PC fight stick, the Rap Hayabusa by Hori. I'll go ahead and show you guys the settings that I set it to get mine working. Sometimes you have to flip between PC and Nintendo Switch mode to get it to kind of activate, but once it's on, it's totally working, as you can see here. All right, let's check out the speakers. Obviously, they're really small, so don't expect super bass. They're quite tinny, but let's compare the speakers that are on the main unit with the output from the audio jack. Let me show you a bit of this menu here. So here is the main menu, shows a preview of all the games. Again, there's 40 games pre-built onto here, but you are able to go into console settings and adjust the volume of the speakers and the output of the HDMI or headphone output. Your HDMI settings right there as well. Optional filters and background music. Unfortunately, you can't mute the background music. There's always going to be music on, unfortunately, on this thing, unless you mute it entirely. You can set the demo timer so that after a few minutes, it goes into a demo mode, which is cool for displays. Language settings here, and legal notices and boring stuff on the bottom there. Let's try booting up a game in HDMI landscape mode. So this is not the Tate mode. So as you can see, the sides of the screen get filled out with a really cool graphic, and there's a different one for each game. I think that's awesome. So this game in particular, the audio sounds great, visuals look awesome. I have noticed some audio glitching effects in some games, in particular Darius Gaiden. The music kind of like cuts out a little bit sometimes. I'm not really sure why. There may be other games that have that, but I haven't noticed anything else so far. Overall, I think this is really good though. All right, let's take a look at Tate mode in HDMI. So you'll want to turn the monitor you're using, of course, into whatever direction you're going to want to use. But as you see, you just go into the settings before you boot up the game, fire it up, and there you go. I got to show you guys this really quick. This game is hilarious.
Drop dead, you scum!
You won't get away with this.
This game is known as Growl in the West. It's known as Run Arc here on the Japanese version of the unit. You're immediately handed a bazooka. It's super violent. It's kind of an Indiana Jones knockoff where you're trying to save animals from poachers in Australia, I think. I'm not even sure where the setting is, but it's hilarious. It's fun. I'm glad it's on here. And next up, my favorite part.
I'll get you next time.
This trackball and spinner paddle controller is so cool. The size of the ball isn't exactly as big as you'd find in the arcade, but considering it's a controller, it's great. It's got a good weight to it, a good feel to it, and especially the paddle spinner. Man, I don't know if they have magnets or weights in this thing, but it has a good feel to it when you spin it. There's a good amount of catch and weight. I like it a lot. It feels really good in your hand, and it's a lot of fun to play with. The set I ordered also came with 4 music CDs with music from the games, and also these instructional cards that you place on top of the unit. There's one for every single game, including the paddle and trackball games. It's cool to kind of just freshen up the system every once in a while, change it up with whatever game you're playing currently. I like these a lot. As well as the SD card that comes with your trackball to load additional games. When plugging this into my computer, I didn't have access to the files, so no testing of any ROMs or anything just yet. Hopefully in the future we can load up additional either official games or our own games. That could be pretty cool. When you plug in the SD card, make sure you reboot the system, and my advice before you go into any paddle games is to go into your dip switch settings and adjust the paddle from 3 to 1 sensitivity. I found that this felt a lot more responsive, a little bit less finicky, and have a look for yourself, but I think that this feels pretty good. There doesn't seem to be any lag. If there is, it's pretty minimal. I don't know. I felt like I was getting used to it if there was any at all, but none that I could really tell. You guys be the judge of that. But lots of neat little games to try here. The controller itself feels really responsive. It feels good. Again, I just hope that there are more games we can load on, like Centipede or Crystal Castles. I think that would be awesome in the future. Also, surprisingly, when plugging this into the computer without any adapters, MAME recognizes it as a mouse and also the dial. The buttons don't work though. So maybe if you guys could maybe help me out with that in the future, I'd love to get this working with other games. Speaking of which, Elevator Action Returns is one of the top games on this system, if not the best. This game is so fun. You're maneuvering through these elevators, trying to get through the stage and grab items. You can unlock different weapons and dodge bullets and kill enemies to get out. It's arcade action at its finest. It's super fun, really well animated, good music. I can't recommend this one enough. Next game is called Dan Kuga. This is an unreleased update to a game called Kaiser Knuckle, which is also on the system. Because it's unreleased, you'll notice when you load the game, there's actually no music in some of the menus, but once you're in the actual game, it's completely, totally finished. Again, it's an update to another game, so all the music and all the sprites and everything are in there. And this being an update, I haven't even played Kaiser Knuckle because I just assumed this is the more, up-to-date version. I especially really like this Boggy character here that I'm playing as. He's sort of this Michael Jackson, I don't know, sort of like mid-90s pop star character that uses a lot of kicks, and it's a lot of fun.
Fight!
As you can see here, you can also break through the stages, which I always love. It kind of adds just depth to the replayability of these levels. You kind of want to check them all out. Some of the NPCs change over time depending on what you're doing. There's different outfit colors you can try. It's really cool. Now, if you go to the bottom here, there's this training mode. And the way this works, I imagine if you were in the arcade back in the day trying to learn a character for the first time, this is how you could kind of learn the movesets and combos and stuff. So basically, the first round that you play is against a dummy NPC who doesn't fight back. And you'll see in the top left corner, it'll actually show your movesets. So you can practice your moves there. You can press start, as you saw there, to reset your positioning. Then in the second round, the NPC will fight back starting on easy mode, but you can press the start button to change his difficulty depending on what you want to fight against. And then that's your training round, which is pretty cool. But you can also practice these moves. That is awesome. The humor in this game is awesome, and it looks great as well.
Oh my gosh!
There's also a crush meter on the side, which I believe builds up when you take damage and then is executed the next time you use a special move like you saw just there. Kind of does an electric move against them and does more damage. I'm not sure if the crush meter is required to execute those sort of fatality moves, but something for me to learn, I guess. Definitely check this game out. Alright, the next game we're checking out is a different kind of game, a puzzle game. I'm a big fan of puzzle games, and this is Volfied. I've never heard of this one, but it's actually based on a game called Qix or Qix, Q-I-X. It's also on this system and also on the Nintendo Game Boy. The idea with this game is that there's enemies in the game, and while you're on the wall, you're safe. But you need to draw these lines in order to sort of close the level in on these bad guys until you reach a certain percentage of the stage filled in, and then you can proceed to the next stage. But as it gets smaller, it gets harder to avoid them, and you're vulnerable as you're drawing the line. So while you're drawing this line, if they touch you or they touch your line, you either die immediately or have a certain amount of time to get away from the damage that's coming toward you. You'll also see little squares in the stage, and if you're able to fill those in as well, it'll unlock certain abilities like speed ups or temporary laser you can use to shoot enemies away manually, extra points, extra bonus lives, things like that. And you'll see once the stage gets small enough, you'll proceed to the second stage. But I think this is a lot of fun, and definitely a game that I plan to return to regularly as an arcade game. Next game doesn't require much of an introduction. This is Arkanoid Returns. If you've never played this, it's a classic. I don't even have to explain it. It speaks for itself. You have to clear these blocks. Different power-ups come from the top of the ceiling with different lettering on them, so it's kind of fun to figure out what different letters mean. As you see here, I just unlocked lasers, for example. That's obviously super overpowered, and also the multi-ball, which is one of the most fun. But then there's the second stage here where this lower level of panels here, it's so close, it's difficult, right? So just so much fun. This is such a good game to come home to. You know, maybe you've had a long day at work and you just want to have a beer and play some games and watch some TV. This is one of those games, man. It's so much fun. And of course, you're using that trackball paddle controller. This game just has unlimited replay value. Can't recommend it enough. All right, in the next game, I was actually surprised to put in my top 5. I didn't expect this one to be one of my favorites. It's called Poochie Carrot. You can see it's kind of this kawaii anime style game. And it's also basically an Arkanoid style game, but a little bit more lighthearted. So rather than trying to speed up super fast just to survive, you're more sort of aiming your ball in certain spots to defeat your opponent, as it's a 2-player game. Now, how many friends of yours are also going to own this controller? Probably nobody. So I don't expect to ever play this against an actual human, but playing against computers in the story mode is quite fun. But you can also play in this single mode, sort of this endurance round. And I personally like to throw it on the expert mode, as it's pretty challenging and trying to see how long you can survive. It starts off pretty light, but it gets difficult very quickly. You can also go into the dip switch settings of this game before loading it. It's default on normal, which is what you're watching here. It has 2 more difficulties past this, so it can get even like twice or 3 times as hard as this apparently. So I look forward to playing it. Just a fun game to kick back and try every once in a while. Definitely check it out. Alright, you guys, that is the Taito Egret 2 Mini. Again, I'm super psyched on this thing. I've been really looking forward to it. I'm really glad with how it turned out, despite some of the weird things with the cable and stuff like that. Once you get everything set up, this thing feels very high quality. And again, the promise with that SD card slot on the side, I'm hoping some of you guys can maybe help me out and we can get some ROMs on this thing. But if not, it's super fun in and of itself. Maybe we can get that trackball and paddle controller to work on the computer and play other games that way, who knows. I'm also uploading a full unedited unboxing of this unit on this channel, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. I wish you all the best in these crazy times. I hope you're enjoying playing some games, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.